I'd like to welcome our closing keynote speaker. Émile P. Torres is a philosopher and historian whose work focuses on the history of thinking about human extinction, the ethics of human extinction, and the philosophical worldviews that have shaped the current race to build artificial general intelligence, or AGI. Their most recent book is Human Extinction, a history of the science and ethics of annihilation. Though much of their current research is focused on what they call, along with Dr. Timnit Gebru, the TESCREAL bundle of ideologies, a cluster of overlapping techno-utopian worldviews that are largely responsible for the AGI race today.
Talk. Thank you so much for having me. It's really wonderful to be here. Really appreciate the invitation. I hope listeners find this to be interesting. So the talk is called TESCREALism, the tech right, and the reckless race to build artificial general intelligence. Overview. So in this talk, I'll examine the relation between the political right and a cluster of ideologies that Dr. Timnit Gebru and I call the TESCREAL bundle. This bundle of ideologies has played a really crucial role in launching, sustaining, and accelerating the current race to build artificial general intelligence, or AGI, and is also being taken up and promoted by notable figures on the political right. So we'll begin with a brief tour of the TESCREAL ideologies, and then examine how this bundle has been influential among and empowered what a right-wing pundit, Richard Hanania, has recently dubbed the tech right. So the TESCREAL acronym, this stands for a bunch of polysyllabic, rather large, clunky terms, which are transhumanism, extropianism, singularitarianism, cosmism, rationalism, effective altruism, and long-termism. So let's consider these in order. And maybe another thing worth mentioning here is that a central claim, as far as I'm concerned, a central claim of the sort of TESCREAL thesis is that the domain of AI, in particular, that aspect of AI that involves companies like DeepMind, OpenAI, Anthropic, xAI, and so on, that is explicitly trying to build AGI. It's sort of an anomaly among the sort of landscape of businesses within this capitalist system, because a lot of, in many cases, the behavior of companies, like you imagine the fossil fuel companies, for example, can be explained exhaustively purely by reference to the profit motive. And I think that's not the case with these AI companies. Again, DeepMind, OpenAI, and so on. Profit is only half the picture. It's becoming more and more of the picture as companies like Microsoft and Google and Amazon invest more and more money into the development of these large language models. But if you look at the origins of these companies, they all go back to the TESCREAL movement. So the reason these companies were founded in the first place was based on this belief that what lies ahead within the space of possible futures is this techno-utopian world in which we re-engineer humanity, we go out, colonize space, and so on. And that AGI is a key part of bringing about this techno-utopian future. So there's, I think, just a really important, crucial, intimate relationship between the origins of these leading AI companies, now backed by billions and billions of dollars, and the TESCREAL worldview, which we'll get into right now. So the T stands for transhumanism, as just mentioned. This is a version of eugenics that affirms the desirability of quote unquote radical human enhancement, essentially re-engineering the human organism to create one or more superior new post-human species. So this could be achieved by various means, such as genetic engineering to increase our brain size. There are actual transhumanists who have, there's a lot of really funny scientific binomial terms like Homo big-headus. Maybe we could alter the genes that determine the size of our brain, so we create post-human beings with extra large crania, which then being more intelligent, then they could further advance the field of genetic engineering to create Homo bigger-headus. These are actual terms that you find in the literature. Also, technology could enable us to attain a kind of immortality, We could add new sensory modalities to our sensorium, such as echolocation or maybe magnetoreception, which carrier pigeons have. Replacing biology entirely, rather than just merging with technology, merging with machines. The sort of logical end of that is just completely replacing the biological substrate with some kind of artificial substrate. So this could be accomplished, for example, by uploading our minds to computers. So the transhumanist ideology was initially developed by leading eugenicists in the 20th century. Julian Huxley is a prominent figure who developed the transhumanist idea, but also there was J.B.S. Haldane and J.D. Bernal and various others. So in fact, transhumanism was explicitly introduced as a secular replacement for traditional religion. So this is an image to the right here of Julian Huxley's 1927 book, in which he did not use the word transhumanism. He didn't use that word until the late 1950s, at which point he popularized it. But the idea that he's developing in this book is transhumanism. I believe he calls it evolutionary humanism. And the book is revealingly titled Religion Without Revelation. So it's supposed to be this new secular religion that's built on science and reason rather than faith and revelation. So indeed, transhumanism checks many of the same boxes as modern transhumanists themselves have noted. In a sense, it provides a sense of meaning and purpose in life. There's the promise of paradise and even the possibility of resurrection. So if you don't live long enough to live forever, as Ray Kurzweil would put it, you can always have your body or just your head and neck cryogenically frozen by a company like Alcor, so that when the technology becomes available in the future, you can be reanimated. So the utopian promises at the heart of this ideology are exemplified by an essay titled Letter from Utopia by Nick Bostrom. Also now, I would say his most recent book titled Deep Utopia, published earlier this year. Bostrom is arguably the most influential transhumanist of the 21st century so far. Bostrom even calls this project paradise engineering. So this slide is out of date, but the Deep Utopia, Life and Meaning in a quote-unquote Solved World was just recently released. So the way that AGI fits into this understanding of transhumanism as a religion is in the following way. If God doesn't exist, then why not just create him? Hence, some in the TESCREAL community have explicitly referred to AGI as godlike AI, that if built in the right way, would enable us to re-engineer our species, upload our minds, and live forever among the stars. I should say that there are others in the community who have recently, an example would be Connor Leahy, have referred to the building of a value-aligned or safe AGI as quote-unquote divinity engineering. So although AGI isn't necessary to create a transhumanist utopia, it's the most straightforward path from here to there. So transhumanism is absolutely pervasive in Silicon Valley. In a sense, it is the air that people breathe in Silicon Valley. It's the water that they swim in. It's just omnipresent. And here I would point to Elise Bohan's recent book, I believe from last year, which is titled Future Superhuman. Goes into a lot of detail about this. Essentially, it's a book about the TESCREAL bundle of ideologies, although the term TESCREAL hadn't been coined yet. So some examples, Mark Zuckerberg, he says, I'm most interested in questions about people, what will enable us to live forever, which leads Bohan to write that Zuckerberg is yet another influential billionaire pursuing a transhumanist future. Elon Musk's company, Neuralink, aims to, quote, kickstart transhuman evolution with brain hacking technology, to quote article in Futurism. This is another key goal of the transhumanist project. Sam Altman secretly donated $180 million to a company called Retro Biosciences, which aims, quote, to prolong human life by discovering how to rejuvenate our bodies. Altman was also one of 25 people, I believe in 2018, who signed up with this startup called Nectome to have their brains preserved if they were to die so that it could be uploaded to a computer. And Altman himself says, quoted in this MIT Technology Review article, that he's pretty sure minds will be digitized within his lifetime. Another example, Peter Thiel has expressed interest in blood transfusions from young people to prolong one's life. Mark Andreessen, the sort of right-wing billionaire who had some part to play in the development of Netscape, writes that, quote, "What AI offers us is the opportunity to profoundly augment human intelligence to make all of these outcomes of intelligent better job performance, occupational status, and so on, much, much better. Without advances in intelligence, quote, we would all still be living in mud huts." That's what he writes. It's quite an inoffensive term. But that is in his recent, I believe it was his techno-optimist manifesto. So you kind of get a sense of the worldview that these individuals are operating within. Larry Page, who is the co-founder of Google, goes a step further and imagines humanity being completely replaced by machines, which he's in favor, seeing it as the natural next step in cosmic evolution. Max Tegmark, who I would classify as a TESCREAList himself, calls this digital utopianism. So that's transhumanism. And we'll see that the next three letters, extropianism, singularitarianism, and cosmism, are all versions of transhumanism. So extropianism, the E in TESCREAL, was the first organized transhumanist movement, which emerged in the 1990s. It was unabashedly libertarian and included Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged on its official reading list. This is a picture, by the way, on the bottom left of Max More, who's the founder of extropianism and modern transhumanism. He's standing in front of a bunch of vats because he was the CEO and director, I can't remember the exact title, at whatever it was, at Alcor, which, as mentioned briefly before, is one of the main cryonics companies. So key values of extropianism are boundless expansion, self-transformation, dynamic optimism, intelligent technology, and spontaneous order, which spells out the acronym BEST Do It So. Transhumanism, I would argue, is the backbone of the TESCREAL bundle, and extropianism played an important role in popularizing the transhumanist worldview. It fostered a community of people who subsequently spread the ideology within Silicon Valley and among certain elite segments of academia. The extropian mailing list was a linchpin in this whole process because it enabled transhumanists from around the world to exchange ideas about utopia and how best to pursue this treasured end. In fact, some people on the extropian mailing list worried, since we as transhumanists are seeking to attain the next level of human evolution, we run serious risks in having our ideas and programs branded by the popular media as neo-eugenics, racist, neo-Nazis, and so on. In fact, it was also on this email list that Nick Bostrom sent his now somewhat infamous email in which he wrote, quote, "Blacks are more stupid than whites," after which he also wrote the N-word. Okay, so that's extropianism. It was the first organized transhumanist movement, emerged in the very late 1980s, grew during the 1990s, and really set the stage for all of the ideologies that came after, ideologies which have played a critical role in launching, sustaining, and accelerating the current race to build AGI. So singularitarianism, also extremely widespread, widely accepted, very influential in Silicon Valley. Like extropianism, it's a version of transhumanism, but it places a special emphasis on the technological singularity. So this can be defined in several different ways. The most popular version in Silicon Valley identifies it as the moment or event during which advanced AI begins to modify its own code, thus initiating a positive feedback loop that TESCREALists refer to as recursive self-improvement. Many believe that the outcome of the resulting intelligence explosion, as it's called, will be binary. This has changed a little bit over the past maybe 3 or 4 years, where people have made space for dystopian possibilities rather than the more classic thinking, which is, as mentioned here, binary, according to which either the outcome will either be utopia, in which superintelligence solves all of our problems, enables us to live forever, launches us into towards the stars to colonize space, or it will completely annihilate humanity. Not because the superintelligence or ASI, artificial superintelligence, would be evil or malicious, but rather as an unintended consequence of a misaligned value system. So this idea that the outcome will be binary, either utopia or annihilation, it finds expression in the idea that we're creating godlike AI, or alternatively, as Elon Musk has put it, we're summoning the demon. So if the AGI is a god who loves its parents rather than children, as in traditional religion, then we get paradise. If it's a demon with misaligned goals, then humanity will go extinct. So moving on to cosmism. So we've gotten to TESC so far. So cosmism is yet another version of transhumanism, but this version emphasizes our potential to not just to re-engineer humanity, but to re-engineer the entire universe itself, to engage in what some call space-time engineering. So on this view, according to Ben Goertzel, who is the leading modern cosmist, also the individual who popularized the term artificial general intelligence in 2007, on this view, we will merge with technology, thus inaugurating a new phase in the evolution of our species, and develop sentient AI and mind-uploading technology that permits an indefinite lifespan to those who choose to leave biology behind. We will then spread to the stars and roam the universe, creating synthetic realities, i.e. simulated worlds, while developing space-time engineering and scientific future magic much beyond our current understanding and imagination. So one reason that, as I alluded to just a moment ago, one reason that modern cosmism is included in the acronym is that it was introduced by Goertzel, a computer scientist who popularized the term artificial general intelligence and AGI in his 2007 co-edited volume of that title. In fact, the book was originally titled Real AI, but Goertzel wanted something better. So he asked a young computer scientist who used to work for him, named Shane Legg, and Legg came up with AGI. Legg subsequently went on to co-found DeepMind, which we'll get to that in a second. Legg was also very much involved in the early transhumanist movement. He received $10,000 after completing his PhD from the Canadian Singularity Institute for Artificial Intelligence, I believe it was called. And he gave talks at the Singularity Summit. I think I'll mention that again in just a moment. But so he was very involved in this community along with Goertzel. And they are the individuals who came up with the term AGI and then popularized it. So if not for the TESCREAL movement, we probably would not be talking about AGI right now. So hence the term AGI itself directly emerged out of the TESCREAL bundle. And Goertzel even participated in the Extropian movement. And as I just mentioned, he gave talks at the Singularity Summit, which is co-founded by Eliezer Yudkowsky, who is a leading transhumanist who participated in the Extropian movement, founded rationalism. We'll talk about that in just one moment, along with Ray Kurzweil, the leading singularitarian, and Peter Thiel. So rationalism isn't a version of transhumanism like extropianism, singularitarianism, and cosmism, but it was founded by transhumanists with extensive involvement in previous TESCREAL ideologies. In particular, Eliezer Yudkowsky. So Yudkowsky, around 2009, founded this website called Less Wrong, and it was out of the Less Wrong website that the rationalist movement emerged. The basic motivating idea behind rationalism is that if we're going to create this transhumanist utopia, for example, by building a value-aligned AGI that recursively self-improves to become the superintelligent being that can solve all of our problems, then we're going to need a lot of really smart people doing really smart things. So why not just take a step back and try to figure out how to optimize our smartness? Rationalism thus aims to figure out the best ways to be maximally rational, as this is instrumentally useful for developing super powerful advanced technologies that will help us create utopia among the stars rather than annihilating us. So these technologies are double-edged swords. They introduce all sorts of unprecedented so-called existential risks, but also they are the vehicle that will take us to the utopian future that these TESCREAL individuals want to end up at. So this leads us to effective altruism, which could be understood as the sibling of rationalism. In fact, it emerged alongside rationalism in 2009. Indeed, the effective altruist ideology was sort of developed within the rationalist blogosphere. So there were a lot of rationalist blogging websites, Overcoming Bias, and then Less Wrong, and so on, where the idea of effective altruism was initially developed. So whereas rationalists focus on optimizing our rationality, EAs focus on optimizing our morality. The approach within both of these two communities is almost identical. To use, for example, expected value theory to determine what the most rational and most ethical thing to do is. This might sound good. It might sound appealing until you start to look at some of the details. For example, EA invented the idea of earn to give, whereby one works for, as Will MacAskill, one of the co-founders of EA, put it in an article defending this earn to give idea, you might work for immoral organizations. So these might be companies on Wall Street, they might be petrochemical companies and so on, to make as much money as possible so that you can then donate more money to charity. Bankman-Fried was the great success story of earn to give. In fact, I mean, he went to work on Wall Street. So he met MacAskill in, I think it was 2012. MacAskill convinced him to earn to give. So he went to work on Wall Street for a company called Jane Street Capital, where some other EAs had also worked. Matthew Wage, in fact, Bankman-Fried's brother, Gabe Bankman-Fried, also worked at Jane Street Capital. Then Bankman-Fried went to and worked at MacAskill's Center for Effective Altruism, and then he went to crypto, again to earn to give. So we all know how that ended up. So Bankman-Fried, the great success story of earn to give, resulted in arguably the biggest case of financial fraud in U.S. history. So on the EA view, morality can more or less be seen as a branch of economics. I think this is an important point. It's pretty much all about number crunching. It's hugely influenced by utilitarian ethics, which historically actually emerged around the same time in the 18th century as capitalism. And I don't think that is just a coincidence. They both have a very quantitative number crunching kind of approach to achieving their respective ends, maximizing profit in the case of capitalism, maximizing value in some morally relevant sense in the case of utilitarianism. So Yudkowsky himself provides a striking example of this kind of morality as a branch of economics. He asks us, which is worse? A huge number of people suffering the almost imperceptible discomfort of having a speck of dust in their eye, or one person being tortured relentlessly for 50 years straight. He claims that the obvious answer is that the dust speck scenario is worse. So if you just have enough people, more people than there are atoms in the universe, for example, who have this just slight discomfort, if you add all of that discomfort up, it exceeds the agony and horror of being tortured for 50 years straight. So in Yudkowsky's words, sometimes what you need to do is just shut up and multiply. This has been a central heuristic within EA. So it's worth noting that in 2013, Peter Thiel was invited to give a keynote address at the Effective Altruism Summit. This brings us to long-termism, the last ideology in the TESCREAL bundle. So like EA, this grew out of the TESCREAL movement. It's basically what happens when the EA commitment to maximizing the good, to maximizing value in the universe, collides with insights from modern cosmology. What are these insights? They are that Earth will remain habitable for a very long time, roughly 1 billion years from now, maybe 800 million. So orders of magnitude longer than human civilization has existed so far. But if we spread beyond Earth, then we could survive for much longer. The heat death of the universe isn't expected to happen for roughly 10 to the 100 years, so 1 followed by 100 zeros. Maybe protons decay at 10 to the 40 years, so 1 followed by 40 zeros. That would be a hard limit on biological or maybe artificial life as well. But we don't actually know if protons decay in 10 to the 40 years. It doesn't matter. The point is the future could be, we could exist for a very long period of time. And also the universe itself is huge. So if we spread into space, the future human population could be absolutely huge. And this is especially the case if we decide to become post-biological. So upload our minds or create some kind of AI, um, some kind of digital mind that could then spread throughout the universe and live in vast computer simulations. So Bostrom, for example, estimates that there could be at least 10 to the 58 digital people within the universe as a whole, while other long-termists calculate that some 10 to the 45 digital people could exist within the Milky Way galaxy alone per century. So that absolutely dwarfs the total number of people on Earth today, or the total number of humans who have ever existed. One estimate of the total number of humans who have ever existed is 117 billion. So 10 to the 58 is much, much, much larger than 117 billion, and certainly much larger than 8 billion, the current human population. So the implication is that if one wants to positively influence the greatest number of people, thereby maximizing the amount of good that one does in the universe, and if most people who could exist will exist in the far future, then it follows that you should focus on how your actions today might influence these far future people, including whether they exist in the first place. So again, this idea is built on an ethical theory called total or totalist utilitarianism, according to which our sole moral obligation is to create the largest possible amount of value within the universe as a whole. So by ensuring that A, these future digital people exist, and B, their lives are on average better than miserable, so they have net positive amounts of value, then one can maximize value. So, you know, for example, just to further illustrate this, for long-termists, if humanity were to go extinct, that would be bad for two reasons. The first reason is that in the most probable scenarios of human extinction, the most probable scenarios would involve a catastrophe. And a catastrophe, of course, would cause lots of human suffering. But by far, the worst aspect of human extinction is the opportunity cost. It's all of the lost value associated with being extinct, which again is just much, much, much greater than whatever disvalue the process or event of going extinct causes due to the catastrophe. So it's all of this lost value. That's why avoiding human extinction is so very important to long-termists. We need to realize, to ensure that these 10 to the 58 digital people come to exist in the far future. So this is the heart of long-termism. It is, in fact, what Sam Altman was referencing when he claimed on Twitter that, in response to Eliezer Yudkowsky, that, quote, galaxies are indeed at risk when it comes to getting AGI right. Later, Altman said the following about Yudkowsky. Certainly, he got many of us interested in AGI, helped DeepMind get funded at a time when AGI was extremely outside the Overton window, was critical in decision to start OpenAI, and so on. He then joked that Yudkowsky deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for this. I mention that because it gets at the important integral role that the leading individuals within the TESCREAL movement have played in launching the whole AGI race. So long-termism is also what Musk references when he says that, quote, we have a duty to maintain the light of consciousness to make sure it continues into the future, and then argues that what matters is maximizing cumulative civilizational net happiness over time. Indeed, Musk is explicit that long-termism is, quote, a close match for my philosophy, which he said after retweeting a link to Bostrom's 2003 paper, which argued that we should colonize space as soon as possible and build, sorry for the typo there, and build literally planet-sized, that's his term, planet-sized computers to run simulations full of trillions and trillions of digital people. Included in the original tweet that Yudkowsky retweeted was the line, likely the most important paper ever written. So there's another, so that's an overview of the TESCREAL bundle. And I think it is extremely hard to deny the claim that these ideologies have been influential in very significant ways within Silicon Valley. And also, it's hard to deny the claim that they have been crucial for the development, crucial for the emergence of this AGI race that we're all sort of witnessing in real time these days. But so that's a sort of weak interpretation of the TESCREAL thesis, a stronger interpretation, is the claim that that these ideologies should be seen as constituting a single cohesive bundle that stretches across time from the late 1980s all the way up to the present. So this is a claim that Gebru and I defend in our recently published paper in First Monday. We argue, and so how do we defend this strong thesis? By claiming that there are very strong historical, ideological, and, as it were, sociological reasons for considering this bundle of worldviews and normative futurologies as constituting, as I mentioned, this a single cohesive entity extending over the past 30 years. So I won't go into detail about that here, but suffice it to say that these ideologies grew out of each other, emerging in roughly the same order that they appear in the acronym. They share a whole lot of the same ideological real estate, nearly identical epistemic commitments, values, visions of the future, and so on. And the communities that have coalesced around each letter in the acronym have overlapped very considerably. So leading figures within the TESCREAL movement would be Nick Bostrom, Elias Yudkowsky, Ben Goertzel, Peter Thiel, Will MacAskill, Toby Ord, Ray Kurzweil, mentioned him earlier, Nick Beckstead, Sam Bankman-Fried, Dustin Moskovitz, the co-founder of Facebook, who is a major funder of the TESCREAL movement, Vitalik Buterin, co-founder of Ethereum, who is also a major funder, and then Elon Musk, Sam Altman, Shane Legg, and so on. So 3 quick examples. There's some overlap with comments I made earlier, so apologies for that. So Altman, as mentioned, is a transhumanist whose vision of the future closely aligns with that of cosmism and long-termism. According to a New York Times profile of Altman, he is, quote, the product of a strange, sprawling online community that began to worry around the same time Mr. Altman came to the Valley that artificial intelligence would one day destroy the world. Called rationalists or effective altruists, members of this movement were instrumental in the creation of OpenAI. Musk, as already noted, is a transhumanist. He's also a long-termist. Yeah, lots and lots of evidence for that. Bostrom, who is sort of one of the intellectual leaders and founders of the TESCREAL movement, is a very prominent transhumanist who actively participated in the extropian movement. He co-founded the long-termist ideology along with effective altruists like Nick Beckstead. He's published many papers on the singularity, which he anticipates with both trepidation, but even more so with a kind of eschatological excitement. It's the excitement that, you know, superintelligence is going to bring about utopia. He's hugely influential within the EA community. And in fact, the Future of Humanity Institute, which he founded in 2005 and no longer exists, it was recently closed by Oxford, shared office space with the Center for Effective Altruism in Oxford. He's also hugely influential among rationalists, and one of his longtime collaborators is Elias Yudkowsky, the founder of rationalism. Finally, he shared the stage with Goertzel, the modern cosmos, and his vision of the future, his sort of long-termist transhumanist vision of the future, is almost identical to that outlined by cosmism. Okay, so all of that being said, 2 further points, and then I'm not sure how I'm doing on time, but we're not that far from the end. If I'm running over on time, someone please let me know. 2 further points to make about the TESCREAL movement. One has to do with this idea of existential risk, which I had mentioned earlier. This is a key idea within this community. It was originally defined in a 2002 paper by Nick Bostrom as any event that would prevent us from creating a post-human civilization. And it was later expanded to include events that would prevent us from generating quote unquote astronomical amounts of value in the universe. Again, by colonizing space, creating these planet-sized computer simulations, and then populating them with huge numbers of digital people. Of note is that Bostrom included in his 2002 paper dysgenic pressures as one type of existential catastrophe. He writes, currently, it seems that there is a negative correlation in some places between intellectual achievement and fertility. If such selection were to operate over a long period of time, we might evolve into a less brainy but more fertile species, Homo philoprogenitus, lover of many offspring. He reassures us, though, that because evolution and consequently dysgenic evolutionary trends is a transgenerational process. It requires many generations to unfold. It probably won't affect the average quote unquote intelligence of humanity, because we'll invent biotechnology and so on to modify our to augment our intellectual capacities in the near future. So in other words, eugenics will save us from dysgenics. So that's the first point. That's this idea of existential risk, just any event that's going to prevent us from creating this techno-utopian world among the heavens. This is precisely why I've argued in public on numerous occasions that I don't care about mitigating existential risks, because the term is intimately, the notion of existential risk is intimately bound up with the TESCREAL worldview. And since I don't care about the TESCREAL worldview, I don't care about this thing that they call existential risk. I do care about avoiding global catastrophes, but existential risk is, yeah, it's too closely tied up to the TESCREAL worldview. Okay, second point, doomers versus accelerationists. The past year has witnessed a divide between so-called AI doomers and AI accelerationists. The former is exemplified by Elias Yudkowsky, and the latter by Mark Andreessen, the tech billionaire. In fact, for a while, Andreessen included TESCREALists in his Twitter or X profile. So at first glance, it might look like doomers and accelerationists hold completely different views. But in fact, their visions of the future are more or less indistinguishable. Really, the only significant difference between the doomers and the accelerationists are their respective estimates of the probability of doom if AGI is created in the near future. Sometimes this is called P-doom, probability of doom. So doomers put the probability very high. So Yudkowsky argues that there's a greater than 99% chance that everyone on Earth will die if we create AGI under anything like the current circumstances. People like Andreessen say that actually the probability is very low. That's really it. That's really, accelerationism and doomerism are really just kind of variants of the TESCREAL movement. They're two different camps within the TESCREAL movement. And just the key point of divergence is, what's your P-doom? Is it very high or is it very low? So really, you should see the disagreements between these two camps as a family dispute, the family here being TESCREALism. So, okay, we've seen at this point how the TESCREAL movement has many connections with the political right. Let's pursue this issue just a little bit more, and I'll sort of speed through this. Yes, because the talk has already gone on for a bit of time. So though I won't go into why here, well, I have discussed this a bit. All of the major AI companies, DeepMind, OpenAI, Anthropic, XAI, and so on, directly emerged out of the TESCREAL movement, oftentimes with financial support from notable figures on the far right. For example, Peter Thiel co-founded the Singularity Summit with Kurzweil and Yudkowsky, an annual event that spanned from 2006 to 2012. The co-founder of DeepMind, Shane Wag, who I mentioned earlier, gave talks at the Singularity Summit. After one of these summits in 2010, in fact, his friend and colleague, Demis Hassabis, who also gave a talk at the 2010 Singularity Summit, followed Peter Thiel back to his mansion. And it was while they were both hanging out after the Singularity Summit at Peter Thiel's mansion that Hassabis asked Peter Thiel to fund DeepMind. Peter Thiel said yes. So that's how DeepMind got started. Another funder of DeepMind was Musk, who later co-founded OpenAI and then started XAI. In fact, yet another early investor in DeepMind was this individual named Jan Tallinn, who has been one of the most prolific funders of the TESCREAL space, along with people like Dustin Moskovitz and Vitalik Buterin. So it was TESCREALists who gave DeepMind money that enabled it to get started. In fact, many of these TESCREALists are also prominent doomers. So there's a great irony that some of the people who are screaming the loudest about how the AGI race is catapulting humanity towards the precipice of total annihilation, these individuals are disproportionately responsible for launching this whole AGI race in the first place. So Mark Andreessen, the TESCREAL accelerationist, contributed 300 million to OpenAI, helping its valuation reach 80 billion. So it's not clear, despite comments made earlier, it's not entirely clear that all of these individuals really buy into the techno-utopian visions that they've aligned themselves with, the techno-utopian visions at the heart of the TESCREAL bundle. From my perspective, that doesn't really matter. The point is that the TESCREAL worldview provides a kind of powerful justification for these rich and powerful individuals to push forward with their various business endeavors. So long-termism, for example, it tells tech billionaires exactly what they want to hear. Not only are you morally excused from ignoring the plight of the global poor, but you are a morally better person for ignoring the global poor. After all, the global poor makes up something like 1.2 or 1.3 billion people in acute multidimensional poverty. That is a large number in absolute terms, but is a tiny number in relative terms. That is relative to the number of people who could exist in the future. So if you are a true altruist, a true philanthropist who wants to positively influence the greatest number of people, you should be focused on all of the possible hypothetical future people rather than the actual people in global poverty, by virtue of the fact that the future people vastly outnumber all of the people who are suffering in multidimensional poverty today. That's long-termism gives this moral pretext for billionaires to ignore the plight of the global poor, tells them exactly what they want to hear. So there's a reason that the TESCREAL vision is appealing to billionaires. Yes, this is what I was just saying. So AGI colonizing Mars, merging our brains with AI, funding research to make us immortal, and so on. These are about the ultimate human destiny in the universe. As it happens, an idea that one finds mentioned very prominently in the work of 20th century eugenicists like Julian Huxley, who like to talk about our destiny, our long-term potential. There were terms and concepts like that you find going back all the way to the early 20th century eugenics literature, and now remains quite salient, quite conspicuous in the TESCREAL literature for the last 30 years. So in closing, here's just a quick mention of this individual named Richard Hanania. Some of you may be familiar with him. He's a very far-right pundit who blogs on Substack and used to write under a pseudonym. And under the pseudonym, he would write about topics like white nationalism, which he advocated for. So he runs the Center for the Study of Partisanship and Ideology. So in an article titled Understanding the Tech Right, he examines the TESCREAL concept, making the case that there's a large right-wing contingent in Silicon Valley. He also writes that the ideology as described by its critics is not too far from my worldview. He says that because the acronym, quote, sounds horrible to my ears and is painful to look at, a point that I take, fair enough. He suggests an alternative name, the tech right. So though not everyone in the TESCREAL movement is actually on the political right, many are. And even those who would describe themselves as on the political left have shown a striking degree of sympathy for views on the far right. For example, many supposedly left-leaning TESCREAlists, such as Andrew Sandberg would be an example, longtime collaborator of Nick Bostrom's at the Future of Humanity Institute, have approvingly cited the race science of Charles Murray, co-author of The Bell Curve and member of the far-right Human Biodiversity Institute. Indeed, racist notions of intelligence have popped up in widely discussed articles by people in the general community focused on AGI topics, such as the recent Sparks of Artificial General Intelligence, early experiments with GPT-4, which cite an editorial by an author who argues that most Black people are not employable as their IQ averages around 70. So this fact has led my colleague, Kira Havens, who's written extensively on race science, to pose these questions to people working on AGI. Why are you relying on eugenic definitions, eugenic concepts, eugenic thinking to inform your work? Why do you want to enshrine these static and limited ways of thinking about humanity and intelligence? Should also mention here, I mean, by virtue of the fact that transhumanism is the backbone of the TESCREAL bundle, and by virtue of the fact that transhumanism is uncontroversially a version of eugenics. Eugenics is really at the heart of the entire TESCREAL movement. So there were two French scholars whose names I'm forgetting off the top of my head, who coined this phrase several years back, the eternal return of eugenics, because eugenics goes all the way back to the very origins of the Western intellectual tradition, Plato, Aristotle, even before that to ancient Roman law. And over again throughout history, eugenics has popped up in one form or another. It got its scientific interpretation in the latter 19th century after Darwin published The Origin of Species in 1959. Then his half-cousin, Francis Galton, introduced this quote-unquote scientific version of eugenics. And then obviously the Nazis implemented eugenic programs that resulted in hundreds of thousands of people being forced sterilized and so on. But after World War II, eugenics did not go away. It just took different forms. Some of the countries that were occupied by Nazi Germany implemented eugenics programs after Nazi Germany lost the war. Japan implemented, I think in 1948, its own eugenic law. So all of this is to say that TESCREALism is just the most recent iteration of eugenics. And I think it's important to recognize it as such. It is built on transhumanism, which is about the improvement of not the human stock, but it goes beyond that. Create a whole new post-human stock to replace the human stock. It's sort of eugenics on steroids. Eugenics has not gone away. It is still very influential. And in fact, it is at the heart of the ideologies that have been driving the race to build artificial general intelligence. So conclusion, the TESCREAL framework is crucial for understanding what's going on right now with this race to build AGI. It has close connections with some powerful right-wing actors, Thiel, Andreessen, Musk, and so on, who have funded TESCREAL research projects relating to AGI and been promoting this techno-utopian vision at the very heart of the TESCREAL bundle. Understanding the future of the right within Silicon Valley requires, I think, keeping an eye on how the TESCREAL ideologies continue to shape the visions that drive tech ventures and misadventures, like building AGI, colonizing space, and so on. And then here's some additional reading. The first is the paper that I recently co-authored with Gebru. The second I would recommend because it aims to be a nice, accessible overview of a lot of the key ideas that I've mentioned in this talk. Thank you very much. That's it. Really appreciate everyone's attention.